All right, welcome everybody to the next episode of the Digital Marketing Agency Builders podcast. Today I have with me Kurt Uler, a 10x marketer and operational leader. Kurt is a globally recognized marketer, operator, and speaker. He's built and run businesses from startup to over 500 million annual revenue, assembled teams across 6 continents, been a part of a team leading an $880 million IPO, and participated in dozens of acquisitions. Kurt was on the front lines creating several of the marketing channels we all use today, including social media management, influencer marketing, and location based marketing. In recent years, he has focused on helping individual business owners and marketing agency owners. Kurt is an author on high achieving servant leadership and is dedicated to helping leaders and companies find that unique combination that drives success. Kurt, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Look, and for those of you guys that are watching on YouTube, we have a little bit of mix up. Kurt is outside, and I'm highly jealous on this episode already. I want to do my podcast from the from the great outdoors from now on. Loving it. So, Kurt, you talk a lot about high achieving servant leadership, and I will admit this is the first time that I've ever heard that term. So, I want to know first, what is it, and why do you think it's best to actually scale a marketing agency?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I think too many people complicate leadership and growing businesses, and it really just boils down to there's only two types of leadership, and then there's how you implement those. There's an authoritative leadership, which many of us get in marketing because we're good at what we're doing. And so authoritative leaders tend to say, look, I hire somebody, I create SOPs, and it says, do what I say, how I say to do it, or ultimately there's that, or you're fired underneath. The other side is saying, hey, look, as opposed to being that authoritative leader, I want to lead by influence. And so, hey, Tyler, if I'm bringing you on my team, I want to show you the outcomes we're wanting to accomplish. And I believe my biggest job and how I grow the company is to serve you and help you become better at your job, which will help the company grow as well. And so, hey, that's a very different approach than about that authoritative micromanager that so many people have worked for before. And I joke, a lot of us have PTSD because we worked for that a-hole boss before. And even if some cases they were toxic, but in many cases they were really nice people, but underlying was the do what I say, how I say it, or you're going to be fired. And that's just not the right way to grow companies in my experience.
Yeah, I think especially when you're talking about a management role or a role that, you know, you hired this person to do something either more effectively or better than you. In some cases, you hire them to take a task off your shoulders, but in other cases,
Yeah,
you hire people to do things that you're not best at, right? And you
right.
hired them to be the best at it. So hiring them and then telling them exactly how to do it the way you would do it kind of defeats the entire purpose of
Well, there's
of hiring
cases. I
that
mean,
role.
there's cases like at bigger companies where I've been, like if I hire a general counsel or a lawyer, an accountant, I do expect them to be more of an expert in that than I am. But especially
Right.
like with your audience, I think so often from people building agencies, or any small business by themselves, like there's a good chance that an agency owner will probably be better at SEO, writing content, doing strategy work, even design work than almost anybody that they hire. But but you can't replicate yourself truly if you're always in there trying to do all the work. And it's defeating as well. I mean, so it's like you may be the best at all of those categories building your agency. Maybe you did bring in a designer that's better than you in design. That's an area where I'm a little bit weaker. But I'm still, because of my experience, I still am going to have ways that I can improve it. And so the difference also comes into how you work with those people. Like I found, like you may be the best designer if we keep that example, but if every time you bring me something, I give you 5 to 10% of an improvement to make it better, it's going to end up feeling defeating to you. And so I've kind of learned as that leader and somebody who's built agencies and stuff that like if I can improve something by 50% or more, I'm going to give you that direct feedback. If it's like you're just way off the thing, I might tell you, but instead what I'll probably do is pull up alongside of you to do the next design with you so that I can coach you while we're doing it. Because if every time it's just like, oh yeah, you could change this and you should tweak that, it weighs down on the person so much, and then they also you lose the creativity that you hired that person to do.
Yeah, definitely. It also is like kind of drilling in a little bit too deep on the negative reinforcement instead of the positive
Right.
reinforcement side, which just is a total, killer.
Yeah.
So As you've worked with teams of all sizes, of all sizes, cultures, how was your leadership style evolved over time? I imagine that you didn't start out with this servant style leadership. So how did you arrive at that point?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I was that very authoritative leader to the point that I was leading teams on 6 continents, and it was a big company that we ended up taking public. And I believe that if you cried, Tyler, I was a bad boss. But if the whole team cried, it meant I just dialed it up to 11, and I needed to dial it back to a 9 or 10 because that was the stress level and what I was trying to push to. And so, hard achieving, do it how I say. And I mean, to the point, like, I believe that if I have people in a lot of different continents and in cities, that if we had a meeting like this, you should be as prepared for it if I walk in the door unexpectedly as you would be working remote. And so it was a fear-based kind of and mentality. Um, and I did not realize, well, one, I didn't realize I was an asshole. I mean, I was. I didn't also realize at that time how much I was actually limiting the growth. I mean, we took the company public. We hadn't had a later $8.1 billion acquisition. We had a lot of growth. But now, as I've been on the other side at all different sizes companies, I'm like, oh my gosh, the problem, like, I could have grown so much more by explaining to people, which is now where I'm at, explaining what the outcomes I'm trying to accomplish, why I'm telling you to do what I'm needing to, and then coaching and serving you to help accomplish that, and being open to the fact that I might be wrong. I mean, I've been very successful in things. And so that was kind of my approach, but it really it came because I had a couple of three big things happen all my life at once. One of those was I lost a multi-$100 million deal and a couple of other things. And I went to a mentor and I was like, what is going on? And like, and why did my team respond this way? And he was like, well, you're an asshole. And I was like, what?
That's a
So I
good
called my mom.
mentor.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked, but I also believed he's probably wrong. And so I called my mom, and my mom was that type of person, no matter what, anybody that's being attacked in the family, if it was my dad, me, my brother, she would always defend whoever was getting like criticism. And so I called her and I was like, well, this is what Don Wazinewski just told me. And she goes, actually, you are an asshole. And I've never heard anything like that from her. So I don't know how this happened, but I asked her a couple of questions and I was like, well, why have you never told me this before? And she was like, well, you never would have heard it before, but it seemed like you were actually wanting a real answer. And so with some self-reflection and me going back to my mentor after that, I'm like, okay, my mom just told me the same thing. That helped me start realizing some stuff, but I still didn't realize how bad it was affecting the growth of my teams.
Yeah. Those self-reflection moments on your own behavior and on your own, you know, actions in the business are often the hardest, especially as agency owners, business owners that we are. It's in like almost human nature to want to blame everyone else around you for
Yeah,
everything that goes wrong. But at the end of the day, when you're a business owner, when you're an agency owner, the buck stops with you.
yeah,
And, to reference a Taylor Swift lyric, "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." You have to
yeah.
kind of just look in the reflection sometimes and say, "Hey, it probably isn't the last four people that I've let go. Like maybe there's something, a common denominator there." So was it the losing the big deal, the $100 million deal, that was the big wake up call, or was it a culmination of just people leaving uh, over time?
It was a combination. It wasn't people leaving. Like at that point, I was like, "You're off the ship. You were almost dead to me." It was that, and I had two big personal things kind of go on at the same time, and so it was the culmination of those things together. The but like so that was the change in my leadership style. To your point about where agency owners, like the Taylor Swift lyric, like you're spot on. Like my leadership style has changed, but what I've realized that sparked me on about 5 years of uncovering what I think every one of your early agency owners need to know is that I can guarantee that they are wrong about three things in their business today. And I
Oh,
say
do
that
tell.
and so it's just like, hey, it's me, I'm the problem. So I've invested in companies, I've built companies, and I look back repeatedly at things, And so often there's something like we have a strategy model. And so you mentioned like social media management. I was at one of the two companies that started literally scheduling for social media. We helped Facebook and Pinterest and them create their APIs to allow businesses to start scheduling things. And we had this belief. We knew we were right at the time. So we had two offices, one in Silicon Valley, one in Atlanta, and that to meet our customers, we need to have like a hub and spoke model. So we need to have local offices around. So we hired like 30 account managers. We put them locally, and we got about 6 months into it. And all of the numbers showed that that was the wrong decision. And so we're sitting in the boardroom, and we realized by looking at the data that we've hired about 25 of the 30 people that we've hired are about to get fired because it was the wrong decision for the business. Well, we didn't make that decision thinking it was the wrong decision. And so I've done that so many times in my past, especially when you're early in building your agency. There are things that you believe are right, but here's what you need to know. When you're wrong about something and you're right about something, they feel exactly the same until the data tells you that you're wrong. And then you realize you're Wile E. Coyote out over the cliff, and you go, oh my gosh, I've hired 25 people in these remote offices, and who's going to raise their hand and be the one that tells them that they're going to be fired now? And so that's going to happen. What your sales pitch is, how you follow up, how you respond to client or potential clients when they don't take your call after you give them a proposal. You give all this time for proposals, and then the client never calls you back. Well, is that the best approach? There's so many things that you might believe you're right about, and you just need to be open to the fact that maybe you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the best business owners out there are the ones that are, you know, willing to change course, change
Yep.
direction, willing to not just drive forward on something that, is their idea, they like it, it's their baby, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
the market doesn't want it. I was actually tweeting, I don't know if we can even say tweeting anymore. Zeeting, I don't know.
I don't know how to say
Threading.
it.
I know. It was actually put on Threads first, and then I dropped it over on X. But I was talking about this recently, where we as business owners, we create these offers and these ideas, and then we get excited and we build an entire business around it, and we start turning all the gears, and we haven't, it felt right to us. In our head, it all made sense and everything, but you can't build it for you. You got to build it for your audience. You got to make sure that the audience actually wants it, that this is actually something that is going to work before you build an entire business around it or hire 30 employees for it. You know what I mean? And it's hard as a business owner because I think business owners are very egocentric. Like, you have to be a little bit egocentric to be a business owner, want to take on all that responsibility, want to be in charge of your own future and your own
Right.
income, want to create this whole thing, right? And so there's that balance of having all that ego and having all that drive and ambition, and then also being able to be nimble with when you're wrong and say,
Yep.
okay, I was wrong, put my hands up and go the other direction. Those people that are unable, like you said, to put your hands up and say, hey, I was wrong, you're going to end up in the gutter all the time. and you're
Yeah.
never and you're never going to get out of it.
And there's nothing wrong with resilience. There's nothing wrong with gumption and trying harder than when most people would give up. I mean, I've failed so many times. Most people would crawl under the table and die. But when you're open to the fact that you might be wrong about some part of your business, heck, you're probably, I guarantee you're wrong about some part of your major relationship. Like, there's something I'm thinking I'm doing right with my wife that I'm going to realize in like 6 months. I'm like, oh my gosh. But when you
Yeah.
realize that, and you bring it up to your team, especially when you make your first hire or your fifth hire, and you make it part of a conversation like on a weekly basis, and you go, hey, what could we be wrong about? Or what could I be missing in the business right now with their clients that I'm not seeing? And you don't defend what any of the responses you get. What you do is you now enable the smart people on your team. If you've done your job about explaining the outcomes, you're giving them the freedom and the safe space to give you feedback, which might be good, might be bad, but they're going to start giving you ideas. And the best thing is when you do that, not just do you uncover things sooner, but if you have those initial hires or your 30th hire as an agency owner, imagine if that major thing in your business as you're building the agency, if instead of figuring it out at the end of Q2 next year, you figure it out in November this year. And every one of those decisions, if you figure it, you go, instead of figuring out 6 months out and 12 months out and 18 months out, it compresses the time and it happens earlier. That's how you get to a 7-figure and even 8-figure agency years faster.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think what I'm hearing mostly is that you need to be, open-minded and nimble, flexible, able to move quickly, and able to. I think another thing is not letting it get personal.
Right.
Like, business is not personal, and I think that line, because this is something I've dealt with my entire, entrepreneurial career, is taking things personally. Something goes wrong in the business, or a client is upset, it feels like a direct attack on me. Or if something, like, something doesn't work out, it feels like something that, like you said, I got wrong, I did it wrong.
Right.
And it's not about that. You as a person and your business are two separate things, and everyone's out here doing the best that they can. They're not, and I think, if the sooner that you get that through your head, like, especially younger business owners that are just starting out, accept that you will fail. You will fail so many times. Like you said, I failed so many times. Most people would have given up. Like, that is the true test of an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. How many times can you fail and still stick at it and say, okay, wrong course, let me change to the right one? The only successful entrepreneurs out there are ones that are able to do that.
Right.
Because if you're not able to handle failure, get out of entrepreneurshp. It's not for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I just stepped out of a 3-year run with a large public company, and so when things happened with their division, like whole division was let go. I had to let a number of people go, including like 3 agencies that I was working with, and one of them did the pushback. Hey, is there anybody else you can hand this off to? No, because like everybody kind of got. But the other one, I was their largest client by far. Sent off the actually, I didn't even send out the initial message. My operations manager did. So I followed up with them like 5 or 6 days later. The owner of the agency's reply was, "Hey, can we grab time just to talk?" And literally, the only thing he wanted to talk about was, I mean, I we did ask about talk about the best thing was the past. He just goes, "What can I do to help you?" Because he understood. Hey, 30 people just lost their job. I've lost that my largest client there, but you're going to land somewhere, and I want to be part of that. And can I help you with anything right now, Kurt? I was like that's your point about not being personal. He could have been mad. He could have been angry. He might have gone through just a little bit about that. That's from shock. I mean, I was a large client of theirs, and instead he's like, "Look, these things happen, and I'm going to work with people because that the business feedback isn't personal, but we're personal. And so whether it's your employees or your clients, somebody has a business, you're an agency owner, you help electricians. Somebody loses, their project manager. Well, they're going to take a dip for a while. They might need to snooze you. Like that's okay. It's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've to take it one step further, even when they say it's about you, in many cases, it's really not about you.
Right.
People are like that.
Yeah.
I've dealt with clients that, we've found out, like, they were super happy. Everything's going
Yeah.
great. We have an amazing working relationship. And then out of nowhere, boom, they flip and say, they're upset about this, upset about that, don't like this. And you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, who am I talking to? Like, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation.
Yeah.
Like, what are you even talking about? We've had an amazing relationship and you've always been happy. And then now, boom, you snap your fingers and they're super upset about, about things that they even said they were happy about before. It just didn't make sense at all.
Right.
When you realize business is business, and at the end of the day, everybody has their own personal BS going on. And a
Right.
lot of people are not at the stage where they can accept and own, like what we're talking about right now,
Right.
that, this is on me. And so they have to deflect. And so, your example was, leaving a company, but at least you told them, hey, it's not you, it's me. Something's going on in my company, so I have to leave you. There will be other cases where they will say it's you, and it actually even
Oh
isn't.
yeah.
Like, there's something going on in their life. There's a big money struggle that you have no idea.
Right.
Some type of funding fell through, and they're
Yeah.
embarrassed to say that, and so they hide it in, this excuse
Right.
or that excuse. So no matter whether it's said it's you or it's not said it's you, whatever happens, business is business. Don't take it personally, and you'll be in a much better headspace as a business owner.
Yeah. Well, and how you respond to that, especially as you're growing your agency, people are, you're going to have people around you. And so how you respond to those difficult clients in those times, especially if there was that good relationship as you were talking about, that that does more to teach the people on your team both who you are but also what you expect out of them than anything you could say. And it's just saying, like, hey, hiring people is no different than having like a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old. Like, whatever you say, they're gonna watch what you do. And so that also then makes, when you respond to the client the way that you're talking about, it also means that when somebody on your team who's been super stellar the whole time gets into elder care because their parent has Alzheimer's, and maybe their other parent died. They have a kid that has an issue, something. They're going to feel comfortable bringing it to you. And that's a good thing. So I've had that come up at times where, because I've responded with clients the way you're talking about, I've been able to have people come to me 3 to 4 months before, like as soon as something happens in their life, where we're able to pivot and accommodate where they're at right then. And I didn't end up losing somebody where it's like 3 to 4 months where I'm like, oh my gosh, why is she not showing up? I expect her to work this way. I had a team member of mine last year, great content writer, had some major medical things going on. She brought it up. I was the call when she left her doctor's office about, hey, this is what recovery is going to look like. I happen to have the ability to change her role. She became more valuable to me. She stayed working for me, and we actually grew because of it. But like, she called me before she called her parents to say what was going on. And so like, that's the environment you actually need when you're building your business, because gosh, what if she had tried struggling through and like trying to like not recover at different times, and I was like, nope, I need you from 9 to 5. Nope. If you're up from 11 to 2 a.m., I'm good with that type of stuff. That's how you grow your business. That's how you grow your agency, especially with like, people are remote, whether I'm outside or somewhere else. Like, you need to know what's going on with them.
Yeah, it is so critical to have a good relationship with your team, because if they're fearful of you, or they're, not, they think that you're going to react poorly to real life situations that we all know are definitely going to happen no matter who you are, then that's probably the worst thing that could happen, is they hide it from you. They are, quietly underperforming, or not showing up because they're dealing with that, and you have no idea, and then you're adding more pressure because you don't know what they're actually going through. It's yeah, I completely
It'll
agree.
help you grow too, as like, it's your job as the agency owner to sell in most cases. That's your primary sell, and make sure there's resources to perform. But so after that though, the hardest thing for almost every agency owner is hiring. And so when you treat people the way that we're talking about, what happens then is it draws people in. The people that are working for you, they tell their friends, oh my gosh, Tyler's the most incredible boss possible to work for. And it does matter when you're hiring in the States, matters somewhat a little bit, maybe a little bit less when you're working in Europe. But I've done a huge bit of hiring like in the Philippines and other places where sometimes I'd never meet the person in person. And so hiring your first person can be really difficult. You bring 5 or 7 people off of Upwork, you give them paid tests, but when you end up with that first or second person that's awesome, they are your local executive hiring for you. And so when you treat them well, and you tell them the outcomes, hiring the next person is not a problem, because everybody wants to work for you and they want to deliver for you.
Yeah, 100%. So one thing that's been in the news a lot in the last few years is this whole epidemic of quiet quitting. Do you think that, the servant leadership style that you're talking about can help the quiet quitting epidemic?
It absolutely solves it. It doesn't even come up anymore. Because it's a combination of both how you treat people, but at the core of it up front is, it's my job as the leader, it's your job as the agency owner to explain to people what the outcomes you're trying to reach. Are you trying to grow the business? Are you striving for profitability? Is this the year where you care a little less than profitability and you're just trying to grow top of the line revenue to get some lighthouse clients? When you're explaining to the people on your team uh, those things, which almost nobody does, especially an agency owner. Hey, I need somebody to do pay-per-click ads. Like, you hire somebody, you put them in that role, you don't tell them any of the stuff you're trying to do with your agency. What happens is they only do that. Well, when you take the time up front to explain to them those outcomes, which is a huge bit of servant leadership, the world starts to change for you. And at that point, then I'm not, I'm not like paying people necessarily to just show up for 40 hours. And if it's an hourly thing, I'll pay you for 60 hours if you're over delivering. If it's salaried, I want outcomes. And so in that case, like, people will show up for you when they understand the outcome and you've taken the time to connect the company's outcomes, your agency's outcomes, with their personal outcomes that might be different than yours. Like in my case, I'll work in any industry, usually technology, because I care about people. I don't like I can go work for waste management, literally doing trash collection, and I'd be happy because I get excited about the people that I work with. Well, the moment my boss ever knows that, they can connect any dot.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you're saying too, it follows through all the way over to, a completely unrelated topic, but sales as well. When you're people centric, when you're people forward, and when you actually truly care about
Mhm.
not only your staff, but your clients,
Right,
and you like, I think one of the biggest things that can increase sales on the front end is purely and simply showing on those sales calls that you actually care about the lead as a person. And I've always
right,
said that, like your competitors are, they're going to be ruthless. They're going to be out there, pushing sales. They're going to be trying to sell the highest, most expensive package because that's what they're doing, their sales. But if you layer over, a people centric, like how, like you said earlier, how can I actually help you? And you were, and you're in case you were talking about, an agency owner to a soon to be former client. But if you have that same type of question in your sales process, and it's less about, buy this service and how can we truly help you, and they hear that, you're going to rise to
right.
the top of the pile and outbeat all of your competitors. So not only should you be, the servant leadership style, but I think there's something to be said about servant sales style
Yeah,
as well,
absolutely.
to
Absolutely. I,
to
I
help
wrote
on
I
both
wrote a
fronts.
long ebook to kind of update a book from the late '70s, early '80s called Net Weaving. And so it's that approach, what you're talking about, from sales or instead of networking, which has always felt self-serving to me. And so it's that instead, how do I serve my clients? But it's like I need to understand them. I need to know what's going on. Of course, I have a package and service I'm trying to sell because that's what I'm paid to do. But sometimes, like, here's what agency owners they don't realize, because you always want that next client. When you tell a client that they shouldn't work with you and why, they will
Oh yeah.
introduce you over and over. And so that's part of the thing. I mean, I've fired clients because my wife and I have built a very successful agency as well, where we've gone to them and said, look, you're outgrowing us. You now need, like, we can step into a fractional CMO role for a while, but you need an in-house executive leader that maybe then goes in and brings in a pay-per-click group, which, hey, we were outsourcing already. And so when you fire those clients basically and you give them time to transition, I can't tell you how many referrals have come from those people later. And so this whole approach of like net weaving, which is instead of like just trying to get your business card or get your leads to tell you what's going on and how you can help them, what I'm trying to do is find out what's going on with your business. Can we actually help you or not now? And in some cases, whether you take our service or not, it actually benefits you, not me, to just say, "Hey, let me take 10 minutes and connect you, Tyler, to this other person over here because she's got through this other problem you're struggling with." And that conversation may be an inflection point for your business. And so salespeople don't take that time, but when they do, they end up weaving all these connections together. And it's like, I'm not just doing marketing for you. I'm not just doing this piece or consulting for you. I'm trying to understand what's going on in your business. And so it changes how I sell. Now, instead of just getting pushback, which you get, I'm actually seeking for all of the hidden assumptions about why you might be saying no. If I know I'm actually the best, if I know my prices are good, and I keep getting pushback, let's just bring that up and have a conversation. Maybe this isn't the right time. And like the best thing I love is selling to somebody and they go, "Gosh, Kurt, we would love to bring you all in as like a fractional CMO, but I need like 3 months to get through this. Can you just call me back?" Absolutely. I'll probably put a
Yeah.
note to call them back in 60 days and go, "You said to call you in 30 days. Is now a good time or do I need to, or still 30 days or should I add it on?" When you have that level of comfort with people when you're selling, they will open up what's going on in their business and they will either jump in with your agency or they're going to tell you you should go work with somebody else.
Yeah. I actually had an amazing example of this yesterday. Because I am a business owner, but I'm also a customer as well of other
Yeah.
products and services. So I had two consults for a service that I'm hiring for my agency as well. And the first one, it was a 15-minute, you know, down and dirty, very, very, service driven sales conversation that it just didn't go into depth. And I left the call of like, okay. The next one spent 45 minutes with me,
Oh,
like took a deep dive, answered every single one of my questions, my
mhm.
hypotheticals, all that. I mean, just like really
Yep.
showed that they care. You know what was the biggest difference between the two of them? The second one was oh, look at Apple's new
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah. Emojis. So the second one, he was younger, like more eager and less experienced than the first one. The first one was older, more jaded, more, just straight to it, which I think it definitely hurt him. And then the younger one who was more fresh on the scene, but just as confident, just as like competent and confident in his ability, and just really took that time. And I felt that on the customer side, that there was real genuine care in that sales process for the outcome, and really took that time, and it made all the difference. I signed
Mhm.
and paid with the second one immediately after the call.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, so I think, there's something to be said, like I said earlier, on both servant style leadership for your team,
Mhm.
but also servant style sales for
Absolutely.
your revenue.
Yeah.
So I really feel that, for entrepreneurs, at least, for everyone really, but for entrepreneurs, having a purpose is really critical in feeling fulfilled when we're out
Mhm.
here, forging our own paths in the world as business owners. So how would you say, Kurt, do you find said purpose, and how does it change how you would show up to your job?
Um, well, I think there's a couple ways of doing it. I mean, it does take that self review that we were talking about, but I think the biggest thing for people is realizing if you want to really find your purpose, you should help somebody else that's figured out theirs, and then work towards that. And so, like, and that'll help you very quickly realize, is that something you care about or not. And so, like, very earlier on in my life, like I started donating to a number of organizations, and it's like quickly I'm like, do I really care about this or not? And so that's part of, like, we're passionate about people now, but also, like, I don't really have to work, but I love working because I grow people. And second of all, I know for every check that comes in the door, I know where I like to write that check because I can see an impact from it. And so I figured that out, and not just like writing a check, but where the check goes, because I really dug in with some mentors early on that weren't I wasn't paying them, wasn't part of my business, and I found out what they were passionate about, what their purpose was, and very quickly I went, I don't really care about this, or I don't care about that, and rather than struggling around with it for so long. And then you can do that same thing with your team as well. I mean, some people literally just they love helping small business owners get through a certain stage of things. That's okay, but how you do it is you need to pick somebody else's purpose usually and jump in. Now you can do self review and sometimes find that out. I just that hasn't been my case. I usually have to test them out with some other people and friends. So
Yeah. I think on kind of on the same topic about purpose, less the word purpose, more the word passion. There's always been like
yeah,
self-help gurus out there that are like, find what you're passionate about and start a
right,
business around it. And I've always found that advice to be very backwards,
right,
because I've never I wasn't born with a passion. I think a lot of
right,
people can relate to this. Like, as a kid, like even in high school, saying, "Oh, what major do you want to be in?" I was like, "What?
yeah,
I don't know. Well, choose a major so that you can follow that in through college and then get a job in that field." And I'm like, they're looking at 16, 15-year-old Tyler. I'm like, I have no idea, I don't know. So
right,
I just kind of picked blindly. I went psychology because I'm like, I guess I like working with people, I like talking to people, so I went to psychology. That's why psychology is like one of the biggest majors by a long shot in the college system. But yet when you compare how many people get that degree versus how many people end up in psychology,
yeah,
it's like a tiny, 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 tiny fraction. And it's because of
yeah,
the same thing. People don't know what they actually want to do. So
yeah,
I've found that I'm passionate about the agency space and building an
mhm,
agency and digital marketing, but I didn't find that passion prior to starting the business and growing in this. You
Right.
become passionate about what you find success in and what you do day to day. You can
Yeah.
also not become the opposite. You can also do something and realize, oh, I don't really like this and go in a different direction. But in
Right.
most cases, I find with myself and with others, you start something that you think you're going to be good at, you start building
Right.
momentum. And as you start seeing success from that venture, you start seeing financial reward, you start seeing the
Right.
impact, like you said, that you have on your clients, passion builds in you.
Right.
Now you have a passion. Now you feel more purposeful. Now you feel more fulfilled. At least that's what happened in my life. And I think a lot of other people can relate with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I like about what Gary Vaynerchuk says about working hard and putting more hours and trying things. The one thing I staunchly disagree with is he tells people to go follow their passion. And basically, like he may not necessarily mean it this way, but how if you look at the comments, if you look at people where he's at conferences, what they're hearing is follow your hobbies and interests today. I'm like, well, well, no. Like, look, I love hiking.
Those,
I love
in
the
most cases, they
outdoors.
don't make money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if well, and by all means, like I loved outdoors when I was younger. I still love the outdoors now. I'm also not working like on the floor at REI, which would make me really happy type of thing. But I still get to go outdoors. I go canoeing, I go kayaking, and it's like I can still do those things. And so I think too often people like no, can you make a living on it? And how is it repeatable in other things? Like maybe you like painting. Okay, should you be an artist? Well, there's like 0.1% of people that's going to be your career, but you could paint your whole life and enjoy it and teach other people. My wife got into pottery probably just like 4 or 5 years ago, and so I mean, she loves doing it. I'm also glad it's not her career because, like, she took
Yeah.
2 years off and she got back into it for a little while, and it's like, so don't follow what's a hobby. Follow things that are repeatable, and then your passion can be people, it can be what you talked about, and you have lots of. It goes back to your statement about don't let business be too personal. And so when you find when what your client says doesn't impact your self worth, when what you find joy in isn't just what am I doing today, well, then you're going to end up being able to be successful in a lot of different ways. And if whatever you're doing today doesn't work out, you'll go somewhere else and be okay.
Yeah. I totally agree. That the takeaway here, I think, for everyone listening is, you know, if you're struggling with build a business around your passion, like most people do, scrap it and build a business around something that you think you're going to like and that you think you could enjoy. You don't have to feel passionate about it, but
Right.
as you start growing that business, you'll know really quickly if you're going to
Right.
be able to be passionate about it. For me, it was about finding that success and really finding that traction
Yeah.
and finding out that I'm good at something. And when you
Yeah.
see that positive feedback in that you're good at something, passion builds. I wasn't
Right.
passionate about agency space before I started my agency. I am now because I've been able to help so many people and I've really built that for myself. So the passion can come after. And following passion, I think, is circles back to the original question, which is fulfillment and purpose. Because your purpose, I don't think your purpose doesn't have to be like Mother Teresa. Your purpose doesn't have to be that you're, feeding hungry children. Your purpose can, I think a base purpose for everybody is just to live a happy existing life. None of us chose to be here. We were all
Right.
plopped into these human meat sacks unknowingly. And really, your purpose is to just find as much happiness and peace in our short time that we're here
And
as
you can
possible.
get joy in lots of different ways. Like I started a SaaS company. I started one of the first influencer marketing platforms. So I did that. I raised a bunch of money. I did that $0 to $1 million and more annual recurring revenue. I'm not good at it. Like it's hard, it's difficult. I did it for my ego type of thing. But it's like, what am I really good at? Well, there's a reason I get introduced when I'm doing paid keynotes as like the king of scaling because I'm really good at taking established businesses, whether they're 50 million or 500 million, and adding a zero onto the end of it in just a couple of years. That's what I'm good at. But what gives me great joy is helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses and get started because it impacts their family lives. And so while I may not want to go start an SMB or like I probably will never go start a new agency myself, I like I love paid speaking. It's wonderful revenue as well. I also always set aside a little bit of time though for the one or two pro bono speaking gigs that fit into the schedule. If I'm already coming to, South Dakota and somebody wants me to come speak and I can bolt it on the end, maybe I don't get paid for that last one then, but I can help 20 people at a chamber of commerce find the inflection points in their business. And so you can get passionate and still satisfy them on the way, but make sure you get paid for it and do what you're good at. The world needs you to do what you're good at and find value there. And then, hey, like I love helping entrepreneurs. I love where you're at, both for your own agency, but helping others grow there as well. Well, that's great. Like I'm not getting paid to come here and talk to you. This is part of me setting aside time where I love the fact that we're having this conversation. We're going to help so many people, and doesn't mean that I don't get another, 5 or 6 figure keynote speak deal. Well, no, those will still come. Like you make time for this because this is what I enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think you can find that thing that you're passionate about through something that you're not. Like for you,
Absolutely.
you enjoy the public speaking, but you would have never found the public speaking prior to finding the entrepreneurship and building the businesses.
Absolutely.
They one thing leads to the other, and now you found, you didn't go from zero to public speaking. You went from
Right.
zero to building businesses, having success, and then being able to speak about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we all have our own paths, and sometimes you may not know where you're at in the path,
Yeah.
but it's leading to the right place. I do want to talk to you a little bit
Yep.
about overwhelm. So, which is really common. Many business owners and agency owners alike feel overwhelmed in general. I've been there many times myself. This is a really common feeling when your livelihood is riding on your business being a success or not. So, what would you say to agency owners that are feeling overwhelmed currently?
Um, so often I think they're overwhelmed because of the finances. I mean, at home and in the business. And so the two things for them, you need to make sure your business is focused on profit first. Too often people, they get another client and then they end up they go and hire straight for that. And so when you focus on your agency as profit first, then you're going to have some money um, for when the slow days come. And it kind of goes like with the same thing. Um, the uh, the other piece is you you need to cut down on your home finances until you find that rhythm. You need to make sure, like maybe you don't need Netflix right now. Maybe you don't need Amazon Prime. Cut down on the home expenses because when you take out the money matters a little bit, you're going to be a lot. You're going to not be as stressed.
All right, Kurt. So the next question I want to talk to you about is managing up. So what is managing up, and how would you do that in an agency?
Well, I mean, so often I find the people that start agencies, they've worked at an agency beforehand. They got a flavor for it, and so a lot of times that is, um, not every agency owner is going to act the way that you and I were talking about. And so if you're a content manager at someplace, well, if your boss that runs the agency you're at today is not bringing you those things that we were talking about, the outcomes that he or she's trying to accomplish, what the goals are for the clients, then you can start those conversations with them. And so when you start doing it, it may end up that you end up choosing to stay at the place you're at right now. But it also teaches you to have some healthy confrontation, which will teach you then later on. The other case about managing up is, especially for agency owners, I mean, it's different when, like my last role, some cases I'll be a CMO. Sometimes I'll report to a CMO. I really don't care. I'm a king or queen maker. Just don't ever make me the boss again at a big company. But I think managing up when you have leadership above you is one thing. Too often people don't realize that they need to manage up with their clients. I mean, ultimately the client is the checkbook. And so if the client has false expectations about what's going to happen, like you shouldn't sign the contract up front. If to your point that starts going sideways, you should be having that conversation up front with them about what are the outcomes. Hey, you're wanting to grow sales, but let's talk about leading indicators. And so I find, especially from the agency perspective, and maybe this matters too, as well as like if you get hired in, like I just stepped out of a role leading enterprise SEO for a large company. Like the way you get successful in that and with clients is you hear what they want to accomplish and you point out at the very beginning that says, yes, this is what we're going to try, or we're going to do for you. But let's agree today what all the leading indicators are going to be that says we're on the right path. And you're taking the reins in that with them. Because otherwise, like the earlier you have those conversations from a managing perspective and managing the relationship with the person that's ultimately paying your bills, now it doesn't feel defensive. If you've had that client for 6 months or 12 months and they're like, look, I need X number of leads on a monthly basis and I'm not getting them, well, SEO takes time. Pay-per-click tends to be fast, but sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. Well, if it's 6 months or 12 months down the line and the numbers that they're wanting aren't being accomplished, they may feel like you're completely off the path and you're close to being fired. You just don't know it yet. Anything you say at that point is going to feel defensive and you've probably lost the client. But if up front you said, look, this is where I want to get you to. I want to get you to 50 calls on a monthly basis with your potential clients. And here's the 3 things that we're going to track that's going to show our leading indicator. Well, even if you're only at 30, you can still then up front, you agreed what's going to show, are you on the right track and how do you pivot? And so that's a little bit of what managing up looks like. To me, it's having earlier conversations versus later when you know it's going to be a difficult conversation, and coming to your clients too and being like, hey, I'm sending you these reports. I don't ever get feedback from you. I don't like that type of relationship, Mr. and Mrs. Client. I need you to be opening these up and looking at it. So let's either talk about, is it giving you the data you're looking for? Are you just glowingly happy? Or should we talk about you maybe not being a client anymore? Like, that feels so scary for an agency owner, but it also starts to tell your business owner, I care about your business. And unless you're just immaculately happy, I need you to give me feedback. It takes 5 minutes a month to open my report.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think so. Then managing up is really just setting really clear expectations and goalposts from the beginning early on so that both the client and the agency know what the target is, what the goal is, and can kind of monitor as we pace toward that target or up to that target then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and with your
Yeah.
client, there's that. And then with your clients, especially if you're working for an agency owner, which I said, a lot of people I think listen to you are probably aspiring agency owners and they may be working in agency right now. Your boss may not always show up well. And so, or they show up well, but you need to understand. And so I use that term showing up. And so like I had this woman I worked for, she was a CFO. She had, I don't know how many dozens of large companies she'd helped build and sell. She helped us sell a company to Oracle. And it was the weirdest thing. Kathy, I would work for Kathy tomorrow on anything. And so I'd been working for her for about a month or two. And there was some part of me that was like, Kathy cares about me. And one day she finally, I just stopped her first thing in the morning, on Monday morning. And like Kathy would hit the ground on Monday as if you were launched off an aircraft carrier. Like I knew she cared about me. And some point during the week, she would ask me about my weekend, and I was dating at the time. So she'd ask me about personal life. And finally I was just like, hey, Kathy, like, everybody else wants to do small talk. Like, what's going on? Because like, I think you care about me, but I don't actually like that. Your Mondays are not like anybody else's. And so she knew herself very well. She was like, Kurt, I love you. That's why I take time on like Wednesdays and Thursdays. But at the beginning of the week, we set the pace for the whole thing. The only thing I care about is, what do you think's important? What do I think's important? And what are we both getting accomplished today? She was like, we'll have time to have a glass of wine in my office or go out with people on the product team later. But on Monday morning at 8 a.m., I don't care about small talk. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like that was me managing up, but her knowing herself very well to handle that conversation way better. Like I did not approach it well. I was basically like, what the hell's going on here? And
You were bringing it in a little bit too personal.
oh yeah, but she called it out, and when she went back over just last month or two, I was like, we do like at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, or after we get done with some deals, like we do have the same time that I was thinking was the beginning of the week. Like, hey Tyler, how was your weekend? She just, for her, that wasn't important, and I was like, oh, I'm really glad
Yeah.
I had that conversation. And so now, so often I'll show up to people. I worked with this guy. He was a private equity investor in a company that brought me in, and like I used for wording with him. And I was like, hey, Alan, like I I don't think you're meaning to come across as an asshole, but you're coming across in a way that you just like, you clearly brought me in and we've been working together for 3 years now because you respect me, in my opinion. But this is how I feel when you're talking to me. Is that how you expect me to feel? When I did that at any time, because it happened at different times, in some cases he'd have to do that to me, he'd be like, that's not how I want you to feel. And it was often actually the exact opposite. And he just didn't realize where he was at in conveying information. that's also what opening up and managing up looks like.
Yeah, I'm definitely that employee that's less small talk and more like
Yep.
and more about the work driven. So I can totally relate to that. Kurt, last question I have for you is the last question that I ask every guest on my show to wrap up the episode. And that one question is, what is your number one piece of advice for a brand new agency owner that is just starting out today?
Find profit. Like the sooner you stop, the sooner you can get and profit for your agency and profit for your household. The sooner you can get that, you will not make stupid decisions. Until you get to profitability, you will make shortcuts in the growth of your business that you would not otherwise make.
Yeah, profit does always have to be the goal. If you could make 100, 200, $300,000 a month, but if you're spending more than that at the end of the day, we're on the wrong path. So I think
And I
that's a
don't know
very
how many agencies I've stepped into that they might be clearing 300K a month and they're spending 297 or 305. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happens if you get sick?
yep. Yeah. Profitability always has to be the goal. People glamorize the revenue, but revenue is nothing if your expenses are matching it or
Right.
exceeding it. So that is very, very good advice. Kurt, thank you again so much for being on the show. I love this episode. I think we hit on many, many valuable topics. So again, thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.